Hi there, Agile friends. I'll come in here just with a quick note to let you know that the Agile Online Summit 2022 is coming soon. To know more, check out bit.ly/AOS2022. That's all one word, all lowercase, bit.ly/AOS2022. Now, stick around to the end of the episode if you want to know more, but for now, on to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Team Tuesday this week with Robbie Ross. Hey, Robbie, welcome back.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you.
Absolutely. Everybody, welcome back. That's a great way to bring the audience along. Thank you for that, Robbie. And as we start Tuesday, of course, we'll talk about teams and how sometimes they create their own problems in a minute. But before that, do share with us, Robbie, what was the book that most influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master?
Yeah, so over the last couple of years, I've started to build a real backlog of books that I've wanted to read, mainly from some recommendations on this podcast, but also from friends and blogs, etc. But I do have to hold my hands up that I do struggle to find regular time to finish these books. As having 3 young children, I do, time is precious, but I do read about 6 books a year, but one of these books that I'd like to talk a little bit further about, I've actually read twice, and many of the listeners probably have as well, is the Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time by Jeff Sutherland. You could say this was a bit of a safe option, but hear me out on this one. Now, I read this book when I was first started in my Scrum Master discovery, and we talked about that yesterday. When I knew very little about what the role was and how it inspired me and into reading more. And that was a genuine turning point in my career as I felt that path of discovery, and I was captivated immediately. The book was filled with solutions to problems and yellow post-it notes here, there, and everywhere, and notes that we've got. Now, going back to the original question about why it was most influenced, is because I recently read it again. Once I've built a knowledge of what the Scrum Master role was, built an experience, and actually had been part of the role for a number of years, I read it with a different perspective, and it was really influential of me because I was able to look at what my first interpretation of it was versus now. Have I inspected and adapted in line with that Scrum approach? What more can I learn from that I undoubtedly didn't understand when I first read the book? How has it advanced since I think it was first written in 2014? Am I still on that right path, or have I developed some bad habits, really? These are the questions that I felt needed answering, and going back and reading that book again was a great eye-opener for me, not to overcomplicate the things that was a bad habit for me, looking at overcomplicating certain aspects of, the sprint events, the outcomes that we're trying to do, the teams within themselves, and have a little bit of a recalibration exercise of mine, and looking at where the team's focus should be, which is, as we know, delivering value, and everything else that we say is part of that toolbox. So it was really influential in terms of going back and looking at it at different stages of my career.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's the ability when you read a book twice, especially if you do it like you described when you're at the start of the career and then a few years later, you will have a totally different perspective. But it also helps you understand what you have learned. I bet you had that experience of, okay, so I've learned this now, right?
Yeah.
And that contrast also gives us, at least it gives me confidence to know that even though the journey might still be long ahead, I have now the confidence that I can learn whatever is that I need to learn in order to get there.
Totally, yeah. And one of the great things that I did learn from it was obviously is the idea of getting better every day, and trying to measure that in some way. That kind of theory of the plan, do, check, act as well. That's a prominent part of that book, is certainly the foundation of what I do now. And things like half done is not done. You often hear these phrases when we ask teams or we ask anybody. It's done, but well, then it's not done. And trying to facilitate the conversations that way, and how that communication does accelerate the work. So yeah, it was really, really influential to me reading that book twice.
Absolutely. Right. So now we turn our attention to teams and how sometimes they shoot themselves in the foot with the behaviors and approaches that they take. So tell us a story of one team that you worked with and walk us through how that behavior or pattern developed over time that later led to problems.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk as well about teams, not just Scrum teams, but human beings. Really, is that one of the biggest self-destructive behaviors that we have is that we compare ourselves to others. So as human, it comes naturally to us to compare. You know, we always look at what someone else is driving, what they're wearing, where they are for work, what friends they have, what holidays they go on, etc. Yet comparison is just one of the most harmless things that we can do. The reason being is that we'll focus on the success that's out of our control, really. So of course, we need to be supportive of this success for others, of course, but try not to let it interfere with our goals and our ways of working. I'm not a real social media person, but yeah, I hear talk of how many likes somebody's got, shares, trends, etc. I know from your work with no estimates, you're really going to enjoy this one, this reel. So the prime example is story points. Like many of us, we've been Scrum Masters on multiple teams at any one point, and this presents its own challenges. But I'll refer back to when I was had two teams working on the same application. So when I joined, it was quite a large team, and we very early on decided that it was too large. We were losing the lines of communication, so we split that effectively down the middle into two teams, delivering on the same backlog, delivering on the same product, etc. This was the right thing to do. However, after a few sprints, we noticed there was a significant variability in our velocity. One of the teams was about 75, for example. One was 45. Now, because I understand how velocity is used, I was able to ease this anti-pattern somewhat by explaining that it's not an achievable goal for the team. It's a relative estimate across for what the possibilities within the sprint. There's no way that the teams can be compared in terms of that velocity. And I thought we'd got over that, and I thought we would achieve that. We'd had a level of understanding until I started to notice that the team with a velocity of 45, it started creeping up higher and higher. Now, on the face of it, you know, it might sound like they were becoming more productive and they were doing more work and more complex work, but I guess you probably can see where this is going now. They weren't. What they were doing at the same time, they were doing the same work at the same rate, but because of that competitive nature that we as humans have, suddenly what was deemed a 3 story points in the previous sprint could now be deemed as a 5, and it inflated that way. Now imagine that if we didn't do something about it, the team with 75 would also go up, which effectively, you know, was just getting meaningless really at that point.
But you're in the UK, right? Like
yeah.
this is now, of course, an aside. But I was wondering, have you ever seen a team talking about story pints? Because I think that would be a lot more fun as a metric.
Yeah, that'd be great. I might have to bring that in. You know, similar to your no estimates theory, I might bring that pints element into it.
Because then they know that after a certain limit, it's not a good thing anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have one too many pints, you're going to spend a very, very ugly night.
It becomes a bit wobbly. Yeah, the journey certainly gets longer. You need help. Certainly. So, you know, the competitive edge of us got the better of us, and it disrupted not only the work we were doing, but it shifted the focus on achieving the sprint goal. You know, the goal, probably subconsciously, was to increase our velocity, to see how much work we can get done, as opposed to, you know, looking at that.
Where did you see that the goal had shifted to increase our velocity?
So it was around the conversations. So during a lot of the stand-ups that we were having, you could see the shift from, right, are we on track for the sprint goal? Are we not? What are some of the challenges that we have in terms of achieving that? To, well, I'm close to completing this, and that'll give us 5. That'll give us 5 story points in the bank in terms of this sprint. And that, whilst that's good, the good conversations to have in terms of completing those work items, the focus on the conversation should always be that sprint goal. Should always be, what are we going to achieve in this sprint, not the number of items that we'll seek. So I could see that straight away. And as a result, what we did was we tried to look at a common understanding. So we're all on the same backlog. We looked at the sprint refinement as a group, really, because we were working on the same items. Was there anything that we could help support each other within the teams? We encouraged that pair programming across it, to build that knowledge and minimize those single points of failures. But one of the most important things that we did do as well was we started to look at the pattern-driven metrics. What was our cycle time? What was our lead time? Velocity was a little in the background as such. We were focusing on really getting the smaller work items into an iterative state, looking at the cycle time, looking at the lead time, how long things take within a development phase, and how quickly we can see the back of it, really. All these changes, we had a great impact on building that camaraderie across the teams and having that healthy competition that's so important.
This is actually a good point, because as you started the story, you talked about how the inherent competitiveness we have can derail the behavior of the team. But what you just described is it can also become an asset. It can become something that transforms it into a positive behavior. So if we have a shared goal across these teams of reducing cycle time or lead time, then we work on it together. If we have the story point goal, even though it might be implicit, then we try to maximize the story points, or story pints, I guess would be a more appropriate name for that. This transformation of behavior can be achieved by shifting the focus from something that is specific to a team, like the story points delivered, and starting to focus on something that is at the system level, right? Like the average lead time or average cycle time for stories within a backlog, no matter what team they go through.
Absolutely. That healthy competition is certainly something that we need. It's fine to maintain, as long as we provide the focus on what it is that we're focusing on. So the shift, we didn't want to lose that competition. We wanted to keep it. We just wanted to shift the focus. The focus is not on velocity. The focus was shifted to look at the cycle time and the lead times and some of the other metrics that allowed, the flow of work, as opposed to, what is a 5 and what is an 8.
Absolutely. A great story. Thank you for sharing that, Robbie.
Welcome. Thank you.
Hi there, Agile friends. Thank you for sticking around to know more about this year's Agile Online Summit. The summit will have 4 keynotes and 4 tracks you will not want to miss. The keynotes will touch on critical topics for us, from delivering on time to helping you to focus on sustainability. The 4 tracks are tools, so we'll focus on tools you need to excel at your job, but also your mission. We'll also have a track on sustainability, which is, of course, about people and their sustainable pace, but it's also about how do we bring sustainability to the products and the planet we inhabit. We'll have a 3rd track about happiness, talking about doing what we love and, most crucially, loving what we do. And finally, the 4th track will be live. It will be mostly hands-on sessions to help you roll up your sleeves together with the presenters. Oh, and we will also have a coaching clinic, as we usually do, organized to help you discuss and get inspired to solve the hardest challenges you face at work. This year, we'll have a special emphasis on interaction with your peers, so get your ticket and join the Slack at bit.ly/AOS 2022. As always, we have free tickets for anyone that wants to attend live and the VIP tickets for those of you who want to keep the videos forever. So check them out at bit.ly/AOS 2022. I'll see you on the conference floor. Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.